So in the last video, I gave you guys a challenge to add a score counter that increases each time a player passes an obstacle in a level, then adds that to a total score that is carried over between levels, and adding some background music that plays throughout the game. So I'm not going to show exactly how to do that. It's already been done, but I wanted to show you generally what you would want to do um, you know, in order to get that done in case you weren't able to do it on your own. So first of all, we're going back into our autoloader, and you can see that I've added two things. I've added a score counter script and some background music. And I'll show you what those are. Let's start with the score counter. And by the way, I figured out there was an error. There was an off by one error, and I knew I was going to screw this up. So last time when I was making our level changer, I was thinking, okay, our levels are named 1 to 5. But in our array, I had this starting at 1, so it was loading the wrong level. So what I've done is I've initialized this value to 0. I'll change it there as well. So when we start the game, the current level is 0, and it loads the current level of level 1 because that's the name is level 1 when we actually load it. And then I made it current level less than max level instead of less than or equal to, because we're doing this uh, counter +1 in the load. So, okay, so that was a little error that I had. Now, for the score counter, all I did was create this score counter script, and it's pretty easy. We just have add to score, and you just have this total score value that you just say plus equals add to score. And then if you want to get the score, you just say public int get to score, or get total score right there. And in our player, I have added this signal handler for debugging here. It's just on score area entered. We just have our level score, and I just said 5. You can add arguments to signals if you want. I just wasn't going to do that. I'm feeling lazy, so I'm just going to say everything is worth 5. So this is a signal handler. So when we enter an area 3D, the signal is connected to this method, and we just say +5. Then what we just have to do is go to our level, and you can see I've added an area 3D here, which is connected to that method, so that when we enter that area, then we will call that method and add to our score. So let's see what that looks like. So I'm just going to play our game. So I added, there we go, +5. So, so you can see that's how we would do that. And then you would just want to add this same area 3D. Just add another one. We'll put this one back here. And so on. You can just create one for each obstacle. Now, if you do this method where you just duplicate it, you can do that, and that's fine. But be careful, because let's say I do it one more time and I put it over this one. Now, watch what happens if I start messing with this collision shape. So I'm going to put this over here, right in the middle, make that real big. Here to cover the entire area. All right, now look, see how this has changed all of those? That's because when we duplicate it, we're telling Godot, oh, I want all of these to be exactly the same, because if you look in our inspector, this is actually like one shape. So instead, what we want to do, we want to right click here and say make unique. Now, if we go mess with it, it only affects that one, not all of them. So just something to be aware of. Okay. Unique. Okay. This one. Okay. So that's how we would do that. The other part was the music. So again, let's pull up our project settings and you can see I've added a background music. This time it's a scene. So take a look at this. Here's our background music scene. It's really nothing. It's just, here's the background music scene. And we've got, this is an audio stream player. So all you have to do is add child node. If you just type in audio in the search, stuff comes up. And you can see there's audio listener 3D, so overrides the sound, the location sounds are heard from. That would be like, if you wanted to attach that to your player, you can do that. If you have like world ambient sounds, and then there's audio stream player 3D. This is, it says right there, plays positional sound in 3D space. So this would be like if you had a specific object that was emitting sound. And then if you attached this audio listener 3D to your character, and you have this audio stream player in the 3D world, then you can make it so that as you get closer to that thing, it gets louder, and if you move away, it gets quieter. But that's not what we want. We just want background music. So audio stream player plays back audio non-positionally. Yeah, that's exactly what we want. So that's what this is. You can go to here, and you can download, this is freemusicarchive.org, and you can just kind of find whatever music. You can search by genre or by like the feeling of the music that you want. So I found this music, this that I wanted to use. It kind of fits our game pretty well. Now, one thing is if you say open, what you want to do is you want the background music to loop. So when you open, you want to say enable and then re-import. And you want to set this audio autoplay to on. So now, as we change levels, it will continue to play. So let's just see what that's like. So it should just, as our game loads, you can hear it. And then when we transition levels, it continues to play without interruption. So that's cool. All right, but I am going to, just for the sake of the video, so we're not hearing that every time we play the game, I'm going to say autoplay is off. So now if I play the game, now you don't hear the music. So I'm gonna leave it that way just for the sake of making the video so you're not constantly hearing the music. But I just need to remember to re-enable it later. So, okay, so that's how I would do those two things. For the goal for this video, for today, is to make our game actually look better and feel better. Some of this is what we call game juice. So this is like the stuff, like right now you have a fully functional game if you've followed along and done all of this. You know, you've got a series of levels that go, that, you know, transition between each other. Everything works correctly. That's great. So basically you've done what 90% of people who actually want to make a game have never done, which is make a fully functional game. But it doesn't feel too great yet, and that's because we need to add more to the game. We need to like juice it up. So we're going to make things look better. We're going to make things feel better tactily for the player. Um, so let's do that. I'm just going to add this. It's bothering me that it's not done. Okay, so offline, I'll go through and add the score zones for every level. Right now, it's just going to be level 1. Okay. Oh, and I guess the other thing that I didn't show was how do we actually show the score? So what you want to do, you want to add a label 3D. And for our label 3D, we can just say score equals, and then in our player script, we get a reference to it. So get node label 3D score, text equals score, and then we have this score counter. You get the total score plus our level score. So that's how we actually show the score. And so you can see, like, here's our camera, and then our label 3D is just kind of hanging out right there. And if we preview, you can see that the score is right there. So that'll just kind of constantly be updated. And then in our credits scene, we can show the total score, although if you finish the game, it'll be the same for everybody. All right, so let's start with level 1. Right now, we don't have a lot going on. We just have our sun. Let's make the world more interesting. So what we're going to do is add a child node, and we're going to add world environment. So I think this is new as of Godot 4. We're going to say new environment. Now, we can sort of choose a background color that we want. So you can choose whatever you want, whatever you feel like makes everything look good. I'm going to say, let's see, I'm just going to say custom color. I'm going to do like a blue. So let's do blue, then kind of a light blue. Let's see. There, that looks pretty. So it's almost white, but it's got a nice blue color to it. Okay. Now, and do the same thing. All right, and if we want to add like a fog effect, fog looks nice. So let's do volumetric fog on. Really dark. But that should be okay. See, let's go to our player. Okay, so now as you go, there'll be sort of fog. So that'll differentiate the obstacles from each other, hopefully. And we can add even more fog, like in individual spaces if we want to. So now, we play our game. Let's just take a look at what this looks like. Okay, so start. All right. So yeah, there's a huge difference between level 1 and level 2, which kind of looks like we've definitely not done anything to. So I think the fog looks a little bit too dark. So let's go mission energy. Let's do 1, 2, just not quite so dark. And so then if we play, all right. This is kind of a little green, weird. we just change it to that, but then move our down. I'm liking that now. All right, that looks pretty cool. I like that. Okay. So now we've got some fog and we've got some basic world environment. So now that we have that, what we can do, we can say save. We'll say in level environment, and we'll save it in levels. And so then all we have to do is in each level, we can just drag that right into it. And all right, I guess, oh, that's right. We have to add it as a node. So world environment, and then level environment, we can just drag it in there. Now, what I would normally recommend you do is before you build each level, do this first. And then that way you can just copy the level and it'll just copy right over. But doing it this way is fine too. Environment, level, environment. And be sure if you want different environments, you would want to save a different one for a different level. I just want them all to look the same. But you could do like levels 1 through 5 have one environment, and then levels 6 through 10 have a different environment, whatever. All right, so now that we have that color and we sort of have a theme, let's change this, and instead of just pure white, let's go that same color, 200, 235, 255, but let's make it a little bit darker, white that much. All right, now, cool. Now we've got this start button, and we've got just our sort of title screen. Let's tell the player how we can actually move and what we can do. So we'll say racer. Now let's add another label. And we'll say label. Let's say instructions. And this down. So say actually, let's make these both the same. So we got this. Say save as label settings. In our path. And I'll show you why we're doing that in a minute. Settings. All right, so to jump, to move, or AD, to jump, hit space, or a button on control. Okay, so now the player knows what they can do and how to do it. Move that down just a little bit. Okay, and we could add a quit button here if we wanted to. Let's just leave it for now. All right. So now this text is pretty bland. So you can go to font space and find a font that you like. So, oh, that looks pretty cool. So let's go. Download file. development. Save. All right, now block racer, font. Say, where's our font? Valorant. Drag that in here. Yeah, that looks cool. And then let's do 30. Oh, yeah. Add one more differentiate. And then our start button. I want to say there's a way we can change the text in here as well, but if not, what we can do is just add label, start button text. So instead of text right here, make that the size. Say start, center, and then I'm going to make this a new label settings. We'll do font. We'll do that same font, but since we're putting this over gray, we're going to make it white and that same size. And then what I'll do is I'll say save, and so button label settings. Okay. So now let's see what this looks like in our game. All right. It doesn't scale yet. But okay, so already game's looking a lot better. I think what we need to do in project setting, the scale, yeah, window. Oops. Settings. That. Okay, so mode windowed, mode stretch, viewport. Oh. Okay, I think that's what we need to do in order for the to scale. Double check. Yeah, there we go. All right, and you can see even though we set a font size, the font scales when we go full screen. Now, let's see, let's go for this score font, that same thing. Cool. All right, now that we're in our player, why don't we do a couple things? So we've got our world environment, we've got our start screen. I think our start screen is basically done. You could move this over and add a quit button if you wanted to, or we can just allow the player to quit by hitting escape. Why don't we just do that? So quit, so we've got get scene. Okay, so say if in our start, and then we'll just, whoops, not in ready. Say in process, there. And we can do that on credits as well. Okay. We'll just leave that for now. And actually, we should add that into our instructions. We can say to quit, escape. All right, so now our player knows what they're doing. So that scene's done. Okay, back to our player. So we want to add something that says hey, you died, and here's how to restart. So let's go add child node score or label. No, label 3D. Okay, so death text and text say same thing. We'll say you died, press jump to restart. You can see it's putting it right inside of our cube. We're gonna put it there. In our transform, we want to go rotation around x minus 20. This is because our camera is rotated minus 20. So if we didn't do that, you can see if we preview, kind of looks off. It kind of looks Star Warsy or something. So we want to make this 20 so that it looks straight. And that's what we did with this score text as well. And then let's go position 1. That'll be right on our player. And then let's do one more thing. Yeah, that looks good. Same size. And that looks bigger to me. Probably because it's closer to the camera. Okay, so you died, press jump to restart. Now, if we were to play our game now, you can see we've got this constant, you died, press jump to restart. That's not what we want. What we want to do is go back into our player script. First, we're going to toggle visibility off. Now, if we play, you can see it's off. But what we want is if you die, we want that text to pop up. So let's jump back into our player script. And is on wall. Okay, so if is on wall, so handle player death. Okay, so if is on wall, then we want to we want to do get node death label 3D death text. Now see if you can think, what do we need to do? So we just got access to this node. What do we need to do? I think there's a visibility. Visibility is off right now because we turned it off there. So we should just be able to say visible equals, not false, but true. All right, test it out. Okay, so boom, you died. Press jump to restart. Now what happens if we fall off the edge? Well, nothing. And that's because we need to do this same thing when we fall off the edge. So if position is less than -2, do the same thing. We could put these both here in the same if statement, if is on wall, or position is less than that. I'm just going to handle them separately though. All right, so let's make sure that works. Who died? Okay. Good. So now let's make that even juicier, because it's nice to see, oh, you died, but nothing really dramatic happens. So let's kind of amp it up. So we're going to go back into Blender. And this is what we call particle effects. Actually, no, we don't need Blender for this part yet. We'll do that later. So what we're going to do now, we're going to say add child node particle, and we can do CPU or GPU. This isn't going to be too complicated, so I'm just going to do CPU particles. So depth particles. And we have a little icon here saying nothing is visible because no mesh has been assigned. Should be over here somewhere, right? So emission shape. Let's off mesh. Okay, so it's under drawing and mesh. We're just going to say new box mesh. Now, what I want when we die, just to give you a preview of what we're going to do. So I want basically for it to look like the player exploded if you run into the wall. And this is why I'm handling those cases separately. If you fall off the edge, basically nothing is going to happen. You're just going to see the player fall and fall and fall. But if you run into the wall, I want it to look like the cube explodes into a bunch of little cubes. So in order to do that, what we're going to do, we're going to say the player has this mesh instance and there's this material. We're going to save this material and say player material. Then in our depth particles, we're going to say material code, player material. Okay. Now size, I'm going to say is just like 0.2. So what this is a 3D particle, so it's just going to be like much smaller than the actual player. And let's see what happens if we turn this on to emitting. It looks like our cube is pooping little cubes. So we're going to change that because we don't want it to look like that. So I'm not an expert at particles or anything, but we can kind of mess around with this. So first of all, gravity. Well, we're not going to have gravity. What we want it to look like is there's a big explosion. So direction, we don't want it to be on the X direction. We want it to be on the Z direction. And then spread 45, initial velocity, say, so we can have it sort of be randomized. Let's say 10. 1 come out that way. And say 30. And 8 up there. All right, so this is just assigning some random value between 20 and 30. Time, we want it to be like an explosion, so we're going to make it like really short. We want it to be one shot. So emitting. Boom. And then we probably want like 30. Emitting. Okay. So cool. And then I think there's like an explosion particle. There's like an explosive property somewhere. Oh, explosiveness. We don't. Oh, that's cool. All right, I'm liking that. So let's look what this looks like. Oh, well, we need to actually activate it. Do that in our code. Okay, so this was called a CPU particles 3D. So up here, let's say CPU particles, not 2D, that'll mess you up, 3D, depth particles. Oops. Yeah, depth particles. And then in ready, load the depth particles, depth particles equals get node, CPU equals 3D, depth particles. Okay, so we want to do two things. When we are on the wall, okay, so we're going to do a few things. We're going to say get node depth text visible is true. We're going to say depth particles, and then remember our property in the inspector was emitting equals true, and it's set to one shot. So just like when we turn it on, it automatically turns the emitting off, so it doesn't look like there's just this constant spray. Now, the third thing we want to do is in our mesh instance 3D, you can see there's a there's a visible parameter here. We don't want to see this cube anymore. What we want to do is we want to say get node mesh instance 3D. Right now it's just called mesh instance 3D. That visible equals false. Let's actually do that before, just, I don't know, it probably won't matter, but all right, let's take a look at what this looks like. All right, so we're gonna crash into the wall, boom. So you can see just that adds just something, it's, you know, we call it game juice. It's just, it feels a lot more tactile, like, oh man, I really did die. I crashed and I exploded. And it really looks like, oh, my cube actually, you know, is the thing that exploded. And so, cool. All right. Well, that's good. So, what else did we say we want to do in our credits? We want this to have that same feeling as our start screen. Look at our start screen. We look at our color rectangle, our background. This is the 138, 214, 255. All right. So edits. It's the other one. Oops. 38, 214. Okay. And we're just going to say load global. That's global. All right. And then I just want to add a button that allows the player to play again. Button. That rectangle. And we'll say wave. Okay, so you can see this is actually going off. What we're going to do is say auto wrap. We don't like that word. Play again. Center. You could resize it if you wanted to, so it was all on one line. but we'll just leave it like that. All right. Then the third thing is this is supposed to be credits. So let's add a child node, another label. Okay, so congrats, death count, credits. So, this credits created by Baxter, inspired by music, and I'll leave this as a placeholder just to credit the music artist for the music that we downloaded. Level settings, load, Google. We might need to move all this stuff down. Make room for credits. It's not crowding the screen. You won. Count. It's a little bit. Okay, so now that looks a lot better. Like we actually put some effort into this. Let's do one more thing with particle effects, and this is why I was opening Blender earlier. So when we're on the ground and moving, I want it to look like there's like dust being kicked up. So in Blender, we can make a 3D particle. Get rid of the camera. Also going to get rid of the cube, and what we're going to do, add mesh icosphere. So this is like a low poly sphere shape. We're going to make this really small. I'm going to say that might be too big. Let's do 0.1. Okay. We're going to change the shape of these as they're emitting in Godot, but like the size, not really the shape. So we made a really small icosphere, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into sculpting mode, zoom in, and I'm going to use tab. There's a mouse shortcut for that. Can't remember. You just kind of want to like, this is going to be like a dust particle, and so we just kind of, we don't want it to be too like we don't want it to be too regular. So just kind of mess with it however you want to do. I don't want it to look all jagged either. I'll show you what we can do to make it a little less so in a second. So just kind of play with it, make it look however you want. And since this is just a demo, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But all right, cool. At least it's got a little bit of shape. Now, back into layout, we're going to add a modifier. And since this is supposed to be like dust and smoke and whatever, sharp edge. Edge is too sharp. Okay. Now, on this wrench, there's these modifier properties and add modifier. And we want a subdivision surface. There we go. All right. Now you can see if we hide that, you can see what it's doing is it's basically taking each of those edges and like doubling it, or if we make it really big, it does a whole lot. So we don't want to do too much, but let's say 2. All right, and then what we can do, okay, so we just click the drop down and hit apply. All right, now we're going to say file, save as, and then instead of in the obstacles, I'm going to just save it out here. I'm going to say dust particle. Okay. Oh, the other thing we can do is give it a material. Let's do, I want it to be dust, so it'll be gray. Roughness, it's pretty rough. Oh, the other thing is we kind of transparent. We won't be able to see that here, that the fact that it's transparent. That this is what it'll actually sort of show up as. Okay. All right. So we can always change it if we want to. Here's the other thing. Okay, we're re-importing assets. And we're going to add node, another vertical. This one's going to be dust particles. Node. So we can see it now. New inherited. Okay. This is what we want to do. Okay. Save. Oops. Save. Dust particle mesh. Seems like a lot of work. Okay. Open. There. All right, and again, we've got this, pooping effect. We're going to change that. First of all, we're going to say no gravity. We're also going to change where the emission happens. So I'm going to put it right there, bottom. And what we're going to do for this one, so for the explosion, we had it as a point. What I'm going to do is instead do direct. I thought there was an array. Yeah, packed vector array. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say 0, 0.5. Let's just do it in order. So I'll do negative 0.5, negative 0.375, negative 0.25, negative 0.125, 0, 0.125, 0.25, 0.375, 0.5. All right, so now you can see all right, so now we've got sort of this array of positions where these particles could emit. We don't just want them to do that. We actually do want them to like move backwards. So we're going to say direction. And actually maybe well, So this is going to be a little bit odd. But what we're going to do is we're going to have them go in that negative direction. And velocity, I'm going to say direction that T and all right, so now it's shooting out the front, but the reason is the block is moving. I don't think we want to, well, we'll see what it looks like. So the block is moving forward, so we have to account for the block's forward movement. So let's just see what this looks like and make sure it doesn't look too crazy. We might have to change things. But yeah, see, because the block is moving forward, even though we said move the particles forward, it looks like they're moving backwards. And we kind of want it to be a little flatter, not like moving all over the place. Let's see. Red. Oh, flatness here. 50. It clearly. All right, so this is kind of what it's going to look like. We want flatness. Kind of like that. All right, that's looking pretty cool. Might not want that many. About half that there. All right, the other thing I want is I want the scale to change. So if, whoa, 1 and like 0.1. All right, so now you can see they're that small, 5. So now there's going to be some randomness and variation, 0.25. So they're going to have different sizes, different speeds. Okay, cool. Now we only want that on when we're on the ground and moving. So what we can do, jump into our code, say CPU particles, dust particles. Load the dust particles. Dust particles equals get node CP particles 3D dust particles. Okay, so here we will say if is on ground is on floor and player is alive, dust particle equals true, else dust particles dot emit equals false. Okay, so what did we just do? If we're on the floor and the player is alive, then we're going to emit the particles. Otherwise, we're going to disable them. Let's take a look at that. All right. Cool. Oh, and I just died. All right, I'm liking those effects.